Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you can feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today we're talking about how to be a good wife. And my guest, Katie's husband, was cold, distant, and wanted to separate. She felt hopeless because he wasn't willing to work on the relationship. Then, to her horror, she discovered she hadn't been the good wife she wanted to be, and she started some new practices. Today, her marriage is cheerful, connected, and intimate. Also, he can't do enough home projects for her. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. All that's coming up, but first, let's talk about how to be a good wife. Like me, I was the perfect wife right up until I actually got married. And that's when it all went kablooey. But I thought that I was a good wife early on in my marriage because I did so many things to help my husband. And I worked so hard and I was so smart. And I handled all the money for our family. And I was great at economizing. Plus, I cooked for him and I was strong and I was tough. So I gave myself at least a 9 out of 10 as on the good wife scale. But I wasn't scoring so high on the wife scale with John. That's because I was actually an overbearing, prickly porcupine of a wife who thought she knew better than him about just about everything. And what's funny is that John didn't decide to spend the rest of his life with me because I worked so hard and I was good at economizing. That wasn't what made him think I'd be good wife material and made him want to spend the rest of his life with me. What attracted him was actually that I have a great laugh and he loves saying goofy, funny things so that he can hear me laugh. And he loved me because I was so enthusiastic when he asked me out, and I was so nervous when he kissed me. And because I loved hearing him play guitar and sing the songs that he wrote. And because I was so accepting of him and the things that made him nervous. And it was that I cooked for him. So my criteria of what made me good wife material and his criteria of what made me a good wife, they were not the same at all, except for that cooking part. That seems to have worked out. Now, my behavior and my attitude changed so much in a few short years that I stopped being a soft place for him to land and became an efficient, critical economist. I didn't see it that way, of course. I thought that I had just become more efficient and was getting everything done and helping him be more efficient. And that he was becoming distant and uncooperative for no reason. But when I learned the 6 intimacy skills and started practicing them along with the connection framework, I saw things very differently. That's when I remembered that I love to laugh and to sing harmony with John when he plays his guitar and sings, and that I still get nervous when I'm doing something vulnerable. And that I find economizing exhausting. And that's when my good wife score went up dramatically. Years after I started practicing the 6 intimacy skills, John told me that when we met, he felt he had something precious to give and that he was looking for someone who would receive his contribution, where he could deposit that precious gift. He said it in such a vulnerable, endearing way that I felt really glad that I had been receptive to his gifts and his intelligence and his jokes and his strength when we first met. And that receptivity is one of the things that makes me a good wife. That, and I still cook for him. Something big is happening here on the Laura Doyle campus, and you are invited. Hundreds of women have become experts on the 6 intimacy skills and transformed their marriages by becoming certified Laura Doyle relationship coaches who live their purpose, have more intimacy, and earn for their families. In my free masterclass, Purpose, Prosperity, and Intimacy, How to Have All Three and Help Others Do the Same, I share directly from our popular relationship coach training and certification course about the number one most important qualification for becoming a successful relationship coach. I also reveal the indispensable first step to having a passionate, peaceful relationship and how to share it with other women. I explain about why our coaches have an unfair advantage over other relationship coaches and counselors. And I go step by step through our proven coaching curriculum and why it's so effective in saving marriages and empowering coaches. Register today for Purpose, Prosperity, and Intimacy. Have all three and help others do the same at lauradoyle.org/purpose. That's lauradoyle.org/purpose. My guest Katie's husband was cold, distant, and wanted to separate. She felt hopeless because he wasn't willing to work on the relationship. And then, to her horror, she discovered she hadn't been the good wife she wanted to be, and she started some new practices. Today, her marriage is cheerful, connected, and intimate. Also, he can't do enough home projects for her. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Katie, thank you so much for coming on the Empowered Wife podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so super appreciative of everything that you do and all the wonderful coaches as well.
Thank you. Well, tell us what things were like in the bad old days.
Well, I will start at the beginning. I've known my husband since we were 17. We dated when I was a freshman in college for many years. Then we separated, went our different ways, but kept in touch. And so I always kind of knew where he was and he knew where I was. And we got to a point where we were talking and I told him that I had a dream one night that I was invited to a wedding. It was his wedding, but not to me. And that dream so upset me, I realized I really did love this man and I did not want him to get away. And he told me that he was at a point where he wanted someone to come home to. So we reconnected, started dating, moved in together, and we got married. And that was 34 years ago. So we, over the many years, like any marriage, we've had our ups and downs. We had the birth of two sons. We had parents' deaths. We had jobs, loss of jobs. Through it all, we were a really good team. And we got to the point where our children were out on our own and we were able to retire fairly young and we started to really enjoy our lives. Some traveling, we bought an RV and things were really good. And then 2020 came and we went through the pandemic shutdown like everyone else. And I thought things were pretty good. And I think he would have thought they were too. But what I didn't realize was probably what was happening was his tolerance of my controlling ways and helpfulness and expectations, all of that were just a bit much in such close quarters. And he developed a back injury that took some time to deal with. So he was more or less disabled. So he was at home all the time, unable to do much, very disgruntled, very unhappy, becoming more and more distant and withdrawn. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I kept thinking, he just needs to snap out of it. What is going on? And I didn't have any idea that I was a huge part of the problem, not the slightest clue. So our pattern became, he would say things that were unkind or rude and be really harsh with me, which would make me retreat and become resentful. And so I would show up really unhappy. And then he would see that, and that would make him retreat and respond similarly. And so it was really a downward spiral that was going on for quite some time. And I wasn't sure what to do. And so with our RV, we began planning, had talked about a trip in 2021. And as things were getting closer, and I was typically the one who would do the lead on the planning, and he started saying things like, well, I don't know that I want to go with you. I don't think I can be in such a small space with you, and all kinds of stuff like that. And later on, he said things that were just more and more hurtful and rude. And at one point, he said, I'm looking at my notes just because I didn't want to mess up the story too much. He finally said, I think we need to part ways. And I went, I didn't believe what I was hearing. And I said, what do you mean? Well, I think we need to part ways. I don't love you anymore.
Oh.
And I have not for a long, long time. And I was blindsided. Now I knew he was appearing to be depressed and unhappy, and I knew his back was hurting him, and we were waiting for all the insurance and figuring all that out to get treatment. But I had no idea that he was that unhappy for that long. And through my feminine filter, I felt like, well, if he was unhappy, he should have said something. He should have talked about his feelings, not knowing or understanding that men do not talk about their feelings, with rare exceptions. So I had these crazy expectations and felt very disappointed. So I started
to hear those words. I mean, that's a harsh,
it was very
awful day,
so
very bad day.
Yes. I told several friends, and they were all horrified, and they said things like, I can't forgive him for ever saying that to you. And so I thought I better get a counselor. I talked to a counselor, and really most of what she did was point out the things that were wrong, which of course doesn't really lead you very far towards solutions. And I then thought, well, I better start looking up more information. So I kept looking up things like, my husband doesn't love me anymore. What do you do? And so finally up popped Laura Doyle. So I started reading about your work and listening to podcasts. I ordered the book, and I thought, this is really revolutionary. I think I better get into this real fast. And so I thought, I'm not sure about these people, but I'm going to join it, and I'm going to experiment. Because one of the experiments I did before I found you was, well, I'm just going to see how long it goes before we have any physical touch or affection at all. And because I'm usually the one who gives hugs or that kind of thing, and he didn't do any of that. And the answer is, it can go on a really long time and really make you very distant. So I decided I could experiment with some of the skills. And I thought, the more I got into it, the more I thought, this stuff is really amazing. I started out with gratitudes, which I at first just did them in my head and wrote them down, but it changed my heart. And I realized that the resentments that I'd been carrying were so heavy as they started to slide off me. I had no idea they were there. And then I worked up to my first Lord Doyle apology, because one of our major pain points was his procrastination, his, to me, unwillingness to carry through or finish projects that he either originated or that we both talked about. And during the end of the pandemic, when his back was hurt, he did nothing for months, and I was doing everything. So my first apology to him, and it was like chewing gravel, was that I apologized for being disrespectful to him by trying to control his time. And there was a pause, and he looked at me and said, thank you.
Oh, whoa.
And really hit home with that. And I mentioned to him that I was in a women's group and that I was working on improving myself. And, in the beginning, he was very skeptical. So there was a long pause, and he kind of looked at me sideways and said, well, I don't think it's going to make any difference.
Oh, ouch.
So I thought, I take that as a challenge.
Oh, we couldn't have said anything better in that case, right? I mean, in a way, it kind of spurred you on. But at the same time, so hurtful. And even him saying thank you to that apology, did that sting a little bit too?
It was hard for me. Yes, because I felt, why do I have to be the bigger person? Why do I have to be apologizing? Because I felt like he was so mean to me, and where's my apologies? But I nevertheless did what you recommend, and I started to see results.
Wow. I mean, so I'm really impressed that you got the humility, the gumption, whatever it is, the courage, right, to say that, issue that apology. And you were feeling resentful, naturally. Who wouldn't, right? That he wasn't completing these projects. He was procrastinating, kind of dragging his feet, it seems like. But you've decided to issue this apology. How did you get yourself to do that, first of all?
Well, I felt like I had very little to lose. And remember, I never stopped loving this man. And I thought, my mind, I kept saying, this is a nightmare. This is a nightmare. This can't be happening. And I thought, I got to try this. I got to try this.
Wow. Okay. Well, I admire that very much because a lot of women will never get there, right? It takes something to get there to say, what can I do? And I hear it was still kind of a stretch. It didn't feel all that comfortable. And then he said this thing about like it's not going to make any difference, which must have been very discouraging. But also, I really hear it kind of fueled you. You're a little contrary, like me. It sounds like.
Yeah, I was like, well, we'll see about that in
We'll
my
see
mind.
about that. I'll show you. Okay, I love it. I love it. So what happened?
So I started to do the smile campaign because I realized I'd been showing up as so grumpy and unhappy. In my mind, I guess I thought, well, if he sees my unhappiness, he's going to say what's wrong and take care and fix it. Of course, that did not happen. So I started to smile at him, that was hard too, because I felt like I didn't have a lot to smile at him about at first. And he started to look at me funny, like she's smiling, what's going on? And eventually, he started to look at me again, because this is a man who at that point he would leave the room if I came into it. He
Oh,
had nothing to say to me. If I spoke to him, he would say, "What?" in the most unkind, biting way. I mean, that's how bad things had gotten. And I would hear him being so sweet. He has a very big hero gene. So he would help everyone else in the world. And I'd watch him being so loving to these people, other women, anyone who needed help. And he was treating me so badly. And I just thought something has to change. And that fueled me. I had to try something else because it was not working what I had been doing. So I started to become pleasable. I sent him a list I came up with 24 qualities and evidence of what a good person he was. And I said, I've been thinking about all the things that you do and how, your good qualities. And I sent them to him in a list. And I didn't really explain, and he didn't say anything, but I thought, well, let's just leave that out there. And then I sent him sort of an SFP that you are such a good husband. And it was by text. And so one morning we were sitting at the breakfast table and I had sent that. And I just saw him looking at his phone, and then I heard him go, hmm. And that was it. And I thought, I'm not sure, but I think he just read it. And that was his reaction. Little by little, these things I think started to hit home with him, and he started to soften. And then little by little, he started remaining in the room with me. And I think he forgot he was upset with me because I went to stand near him and he put his arm around me. And I thought, well, that's wild. And he let it slide down. It was almost a butt pat. And I thought, oh,
oh my
it would have been
God.
a mistake, but I'm going to stand here until he's done. By little, I started to feel like there was some engagement.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big moment when he puts his arm around you and it's almost a butt pat again. I mean, I can see that might have made you even nervous in a way. Did you kind of have butterflies in your stomach from?
I did. I thought, what's going on here? This is someone who's not touched me for any reason in months and months and months. Like, did he forget he hates me?
I mean, it sounds like he was kind of getting forgetful about that. And then,
Yeah.
and then when you sent that list of his good qualities, what made him a good husband, I mean, was that hard to come up with, or did you feel, I don't know, because sometimes I feel a little smug when I'm using the skills. I'm like, ha ha ha, I am taking this high road or whatever. So how was that for you?
Well, it took me a while to compile them because I put down every time I saw him doing something or thought about things he had done, I wrote down the quality. So things like being protective, being loving, a good dad. And I thought about them and just kept compiling a list because I thought I needed to share it with him. There was evidence. It was evidence that I had a good man, and it took me a while to pull them together. And I thought, I don't want to sit on it. I'm just going to share it with him.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew how to take it, but I think little by little, it was just like smothering him with kindness. And I had no expectations. I sent these messages and I thought, I got to do this and just we'll see what happens.
I mean, it's like, it's kind of fun to make people's head explode that way, right? Did you enjoy that part?
I did.
Okay, yeah.
I did.
So did I. Okay, just checking. I relate to you a lot, Katie. So that's okay. So that's what's happening. All right. So so he kind of lets out this sound. He reads that list and puts his arm around you. So you're seeing a little bit of a thaw and maybe some skepticism, but it's kind of eroding as you're keeping up this focus this new focus.
Yes, it was, and I doubled down on my attendance at group coaching calls, and I consumed all the blogs and read Circle. Before that it was Facebook. Read everything I could, and I found that it started to really thaw both of us, and the emotional safety was starting to creep back in, and some good habits were being built on my side. But I knew that for me, I've been on enough diets and failed that I couldn't just say, okay, I'm going to do it for a week or 2 weeks. I thought, I'm going to give myself a year, at least a year of this to make this become ingrained, to be the new me. Because I knew the worst thing I could do is start down this path and then abandon it, because then I don't think he'd ever trust me again. Because he'd already said, I don't think it's going to matter. You are who you are, type of thing.
Hurtful, painful.
Yeah.
But you were very committed.
I was very committed. I just could not see everything we'd built being thrown away. And part of what fueled me was I had just, before I found you, I'd assisted a friend through her divorce. I assisted her because I was giving her information based on benefits and stuff. I was a federal employee. Her husband was too. And I knew all about what she needed to do. And I learned so much about divorce and what happens in the state we live in. Things like, I know too much about it. And so having been down that road and seen what happened, I just could not go down without a fight. I had to try everything. And I began to realize, Laura, as I went on, that this wasn't just to save my marriage. This was about being a better me. It really is true that I could use the skills on other people. I have 2 grown sons now, and I'm starting to really think when I interact with them that these are men too. And yes, I'm their mother, because my husband at one point had said along the way, don't mother me. Very telling. I am their mother, these young men, but I don't have to smother them. And I need to be respectful. And it's just so amazing that I can use these skills going forward. I'm not perfect, but I'm doing what I can and looking in the rearview mirror often saying, well, I could have done better there. And maybe in the future I can try this. So it's
Which
just
is
been
progress. That's what progress looks like, right? Yep. Seeing things in the rearview mirror and then realizing. So how has this impacted your relationship with your 2 grown sons?
I'm really in early days with them. One of them has moved in with us for all good reasons. And I am mindful. I tell myself, it's almost a mantra, office paper, office paper, office paper. It's my little chant in my head. And I think understanding that I need to show respect, that it's good practice for everyone, especially men in my life.
So I really hear you want to be a respectful woman, a respectful wife, a respectful mother, even is important.
I do.
That's who you want to be. This is And this is enhancing your relationships and even the connection you have with your sons, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm hoping it will be more and more.
Yeah. So I hear, and I think I hear a little bit of pain there too. Maybe that your relationship with your sons has not been as connected as you would like. And this is an area where maybe there's some excitement of knowing that you can change that. Do I have that right?
Yeah, well, we've always been connected, but where have struggled is moving into this new phase where they're complete, independent, autonomous adults, and they have relationships that
So
don't
weird.
involve me. So that's where I want to maintain the connection, but have it be an appropriate connection that is an adult, respectful one. And so that, I think, is where I'm going to find the best use of the skills.
So I'm interested in that because it's kind of exciting in a way. It sounds like this, you've got a new way of showing up with them that you didn't
Well,
have
to be
before.
honest, yeah, I see that new way. I'm not quite there yet, but I
Okay,
see
gotcha.
it, and it is a path I want to follow. Yes.
You know what? I feel like that's the most painful part of this journey of all is when you sort of see something like you described, when you had written that you were kind of horrified when you first, I think, read the book, The Empowered Wife or something, because you saw how you weren't showing up in the way that you would like to show up.
With my husband, no. I
With your
mean,
husband, yeah.
as you say, you don't know what you don't know.
You
And so I was
don't.
able to forgive myself, but I was absolutely horrified for a long time and ashamed. But we all kind of go through that, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely did too. And I hear a lot of students feeling that way. And so anyway, I think it's the most excruciating part of the journey is knowing something before you can get yourself to do it. And you're like, oh, wow, I guess, yeah, that's where I want to be over there, but here's where I am right now. And anyway, I appreciate this vulnerability of you sharing about your relationship with your sons and how you're seeing a possibility for yourself. And I just hear your enormous accountability, which I admire very much about, yeah, I'm not there yet. It's probably going to be a little while before I get all the way to where I want to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, and it does feel vulnerable. It sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel so deeply that I have no control.
Yeah.
I get it now.
Yeah. Even though you want the world for those
Yeah.
men, I was going to say those boys, but they're men. And you would like to contribute, and you will, but maybe not the way you had been in the past, it sounds like.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Thanks for sharing about that. This really kind of speaks to the idea of, the skills are for you, right? That there's more than just saving your marriage, but which it sounds like you absolutely did too. But any other skills? So I love how you described how you use the apology and the gratitude. And what else did you start doing differently than what you had been
I
doing?
am really big on looking at the heart messages, and just looking for evidence that my husband loves me. I never saw that stuff before. I don't know how I missed it. So like last year we took a trip together, and we were traveling and in our RV, and I said I would go to the laundromat and stay there while he did something he really wanted to do in this one state we were traveling through, and I didn't need to do it. So I was a little nervous because I didn't know the area, and I said, I'm not sure if this is safe for me to be left here without a car. And he said, don't worry, there's nothing to worry about. It's safe. I went into the laundromat, and this gentleman, this attendant, came up to me and said, was that your husband that was here? I said, yeah. He said, well, he came up to me and he talked to me and he asked me, was this area safe? And I told him, oh, yes, it's fine here. I have never seen any problem. Some people steal the quarters, but it's fine. And Laura, I was astonished because my husband had gone around behind my back and done some investigation to make sure that I would be safe. And I had no idea. And I started to see really sweet things like that. He was fixing something in our shower in our master bedroom, and it wasn't fixable. And he had to go do some other things for it. And then in the morning, I saw he took himself upstairs to take a shower. And I thought, oh no, is he withdrawing again? Like, started to get fearful. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. I wonder if he went upstairs to use that shower so I could have the other one. And later he came down and I said, you went upstairs to use the shower so I wouldn't be inconvenienced. And he said, yes. I figured since I broke the shower, meaning him, that I should let you help. And I said, that was so sweet. And he just beamed. And that is not a thought that would ever have entered my head before I started looking for evidence, looking for the heart messages and appreciating him. And now I see all around me that he really does want me to be happy, that he really does want to protect me. And I wasn't seeing that. I just read everything wrong. And now I have a new reader filter, a new perspective on things. And, you know, we were on a trip last year at a very remote, beautiful park, and it was dark and I had my pajamas on, and he came in the trailer and took me outside by the hand in my pajamas. There's no one around, and said, I want you to see the moon. Took me out and we looked at the stars, because it was one of these dark sky parks where you can see a million stars like you did when we were growing up. And he just brought me out by the hand and we stood outside and looked at the moon. And that was just such a sweet and amazing moment. And I was like, what is he doing? But I trusted him and followed him outside. And it was just so neat. And I would have missed these moments if I hadn't just said, I got to be doing things differently. This is not working for me.
That is such a romantic moment. So sweet, so intimate and connected. So,
it was. And that's the man I fell in love with. And he's back. He's back.
But this is not the guy that wouldn't look at you and wanted to separate and said he didn't love you. And that's some other guy. Like, he sounds so different. So you've certainly changed in this journey, it sounds like. And I love your story of growing these new perspectives, the new reader filters. Has your husband changed?
I think he has, in that he smiles at me. Like, I saw him the other day smiling at me across the room, and I thought, oh, what's up with that? But I liked it. I didn't ask. And he has been mirroring back to me some appreciation. And he gives me so much grace now. Remember what I said? He just barked at me and wouldn't look at me. If I do something, I am a mere mortal woman. He lets it go. He's so forgiving. He's back to being the really gracious person that I originally loved to be with. So I don't know that he's changed, but I think by me not behaving badly, it's allowed his good qualities to shine again.
Beautiful. I just admire this so much, what you're describing, because that is a big transformation at your house. And all these things that you're saying that you did, making the gratitude lists and the apologies and listening for the heart messages and the smile campaigns, they sound simple, but they're not that easy to get yourself to do, right?
No, and I think he's such a forgiving person that as I started on the skills and he began to thaw, those little things gave me encouragement. And it is because of who he is. When he told me he didn't love me, my heart said, it's not true. I felt deep down that I still had evidence that he did. And so I just felt like I had to do everything to get back to that place. Knowing he never stopped loving me. I think he's one of these men who does not speak with words, but through his actions. And his actions were telling me that he never stopped loving me, some of them. And now I see his actions saying that a lot. I've never heard him retract his bad words of that breakdown, but I don't need that. His actions have done it a million times over.
This is extraordinary. You don't need that. I mean, doesn't part of you long for him to just say, I love you, I've always loved you? I mean, something like that?
Part of me does. He comes from a family culture where you don't speak those words. So I've only heard them a few times in our very long relationship. And I've always kind of known that his actions tell me he loves me. And so for him to say, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it when I said that, would just be it'd be like an alien thing. So through listening to the group calls and other women and you know, you're coaching the coaches, I just came to realize it doesn't matter. I don't need that. I don't need that certainty other than just seeing his actions, and he shows that he does love me.
That's all the assurance you need.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I admire that too. I feel like it sounds, it's very wise. That's incredibly wise because you're focusing on the experience you want to have, and therefore you are experiencing his love instead of focusing on this one little piece that you could easily obsess about and say, well, he hasn't done this. So, it still feels incomplete or stressful, but I'm not really hearing that from you. I'm hearing such wise focus. It's really,
and I have to limit my time with the people I told about all this because they are probably back in that space of I can never forgive him. And I even told one woman, you don't get ahead of me here. I'm the one who might be hurt. So just by choosing my focus, absolutely, and not sharing the meat of my journey with people who don't understand, it's been very helpful.
yeah, there's kind of a danger of people that love you and want to protect you can be quick to say, he was wrong, he's bad, he's mean, right? Sort of create a focus that doesn't serve you.
That's right. They wanted to diagnose him with all these personality disorders. I'm not kidding. So I can't spend time on that with them. It doesn't serve me.
No. And that is so de rigueur to just like, he might be a narcissist. There's lots of things he could have now, right? That,
yeah.
And that wouldn't serve you. That wouldn't get you to where you are now, which is where he grabs you by the hand and says, come out and look at the moon and the stars with me. Yeah. All right. So what about, he used to procrastinate with his time a lot. That was so annoying when he was doing that. Right. So, how's that going?
It's funny. The more I stay off his paper, the more he steps forward to do things. And I've come to realize that I tell myself, why did I have all these expectations of him? I guess for all those years, I was always expecting to get something from him. Why? That's terrible. I just feel badly. And so now it's not a transactional thing. It's more, he understands what his priorities are. He wants to do things that please him, that are his self-care. He has so much energy in a day. It's not up to me to decide how he spends it. And he is stepping forward to do things. And believe me, I lavish all kinds of praise all over it.
I love
I'm so
that.
appreciative. And, one of the skills that we're taught is to try to express how things make you feel. And so it's funny. He's kind of funny. He can be hilarious. I'll say things like, oh, when you do that, I feel so loved. I feel so cared for. And he'll just pause and say, well, don't get used to it. Silly stuff like that. I just don't think he's a good receiver, I'm on his paper, of compliments. So I have to be judicious. I can say thank you, but I can't go overboard.
Well, I hear an element of playfulness in that too, right?
There
Just
is.
don't get used to it because it's kind of a wink, wink. Like, what else can I do around here to make her feel loved? Is kind of what I hear is underneath that. Is that right?
There is. I've been writing down SFPs about, I feel so cared for. You're such a good fixer. You're so good at taking care of us. And, things like that. I think he doesn't say anything, but I think all of it just puffs him up. I can see it.
He's a little taller than he used to be now because he stands straighter and more.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
More proud. Yeah. Yep. And what a great thing to use your influence to have that effect on your husband, right? Isn't that, I just feel like that's such a superpower.
Yeah, we really talk about in this program where our power lies. And I had no idea until I found you and the skills. It's true.
So he's fixing things that you want fixed more than ever, it sounds like.
Yeah, and he's taking initiative on things that, that, for example, he had bought all these smoke detectors and they sat for a couple of years. And in my old story was like, oh my gosh, he would start things, never finish them. Turns out he had a plan for how those would be installed and when. And when the time was right, he got them in, he got them all wired. And I said, oh, you do so much to take care of our safety. I had no idea you had all this in mind. And he did. He just doesn't share it. But now I trust him. I'm starting to really trust him instead of playing these negative stories of he's a starter, never finisher, and it wasn't serving me. And I have more to do, but I'm really trying to flip all these stories. It really isn't the stories that we tell ourselves. If they're bad, then it keeps us stuck.
And I also just hear, I think, I kind of hear a theme of you enjoying Katie more than you did. Is that right?
I do. You really do have a lot more time for self-care and our own pursuits when I'm not cogitating and ruminating on all the things that I don't like about blah, 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 his behavior. And, it's just, I leave that now. And life is not perfect. There's still projects that are not done. But,
Right.
and he says, don't worry, they'll get done. And I just have to just overlook. And it's okay. I'm a lot happier now. I just overlook whatever I don't want to see.
And what is your relationship like now?
Oh my gosh. It really is connected. And I know he wants to spend time with me. He is tender. He occasionally does initiate physical affection. He'll put his arm around me or kiss me goodbye. There's an emotional safety because I realized, again, to my horror and dismay, I was shutting down conversations for quite some time. And I was so critical that now there's an emotional safety where he'll speak to me about all kinds of things that are on his mind and share funny videos and things that were just absent.
Mm.
He's back to kind of being my boyfriend. It's a lot of years since he was my boyfriend.
Yeah, like 34 years ago, he was your boyfriend.
Oh, longer than that.
Longer than that even. Yeah, 36 years or 37 or.
I've known him close to 50 years, believe it or not.
Oh,
We
you
were together all
have.
that time, but that's a long time to
Since
know
you were
somebody.
17. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So it's a lot more fun to have a boyfriend than kind of a brooding roommate, sounds like.
Yes.
And so you know how this is done. So what is your best tip for somebody who is where you were, where he says what and won't look at her and wants to separate and says he doesn't love her, and she wants him to say, she wants what you have now. Come look at the moon with me. He smiles at her across the room and he's fixing things to delight her and giving her the working shower instead of the one that's broken, and just being considerate and sweet and making her feel loved. What should she do?
I really could not urge women more strongly to find Laura Doyle, read the books, listen to the podcast, join Ridiculously Happy Wives, commit to yourself, and really work the skills. And you will find that the skills are for you, but also there's a very lovely likelihood. I really think that your relationship will improve, and so will all your relationships.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And what do you think you would say to Katie if you could go back in time and tell her what you know now?
There are tools and there are ways of looking at the world out there that you need to go and find. That this is not the end. You can do this for you, and your whole world will change. Find Laura Doyle and everything that she offers, and Get on it, girl.
What a transformation you've had. I mean, can you even believe it when you look back at how far you've come? Is it kind of, I don't know,
It
surprising?
is kind of unreal. It is. Next month will be a year since I joined Ridiculously Happy Wives, and it has been a huge transformation. And part of me is like, yeah, I mean, this is the way things used to be. But then I do go back and think about where we were and how close we were to not being together at all. I mean, I've learned that men who really want to leave, leave. So I think he didn't really want to leave. He never left, even though he said he wanted to. And I even said, well, take the trailer and go live somewhere else. And he knew that was possible. He didn't do it.
Mm, mm.
And he said, well, it's the finances. We just can't afford it and whatever. If he really wanted to leave, he would have left.
He would have left. Yeah.
And I think he was maybe not knowing it, but he was waiting for me to change. He was waiting for me to, I don't know, for something to change.
Yeah. And you didn't know you had any power to fix this. You thought it was him, probably, right?
Absolutely.
And then when you discovered those superpowers, you went straight to it and decided to create the kind of relationship you have now.
I did. And what gave me courage was all of the stories of the women who had, and all of the wins that I heard about through the calls, and all of the triumphs. And I felt it was kind of like climbing a mountain one handhold at a time. I saw that some women got to the top, and I'm no less than they are, and I can do this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's why I want to give you this wife award today.
Thank you.
Yes, this is your best wife. You're the best wife. I just really feel like it's such an incredible accomplishment to make it to the peak, climbing one hand at a time, like you did through the intimacy skills to create the beautiful relationship that you have now, the beautiful marriage, to save all of that 50 years of history, and you keep your family intact, your life with those two grown sons, one who's living with you now. I just admire and respect so much what you've accomplished. So I wanted to acknowledge you and
thank you, Laura.
Do our happy dance together.
Yeah. I'm dancing here.
So, well, Katie, this has been awesome. Very inspiring to get to hear how you did it. And thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing so authentically, and inspiring so many women who will come after you, who are just now discovering the intimacy skills and wondering if it'll really work for them. Getting to see your example is just tremendous.
It's my pleasure. I would love to pay it forward a little bit.
You certainly did today. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. On next week's podcast, we'll talk about what to do when your husband is an addict. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that the Empowered Wife podcast has been downloaded over 3 million times, which means you've been sharing it with other women. I see what you're doing, and I'm so happy and grateful. Thank you.